Hey, everybody. Got a great episode today with a therapist, Julie Brams, who's going to talk to us about how to integrate earth-centered and nature-centered approaches into psychotherapy. This is a really, really cool episode because her work is very grounded in research and therapy techniques that then encompass research science-based approaches to how to supplement your healing and things with nature. And so it's always really cool when something like that is coinciding with the science and study of psychotherapy. I'm excited to put this one out there today. Quick plug for our charity of the month, which is Preble Street. Preble Street is a local charity in Maine that works on food security. They provide what they call a food security hub, where they cook and distribute literally thousands of meals every day to individuals who are experiencing food insecurity, homelessness, and other problems that have to do with their ability to get food. Go to preblestreet.org, and by the way, Preble is Preble. You'll also find that in the show notes as well. preblestreet.org to learn more about this wonderful organization. And as always, 50% of your donation, if you are a donator to the Patreon of this show, 50% will go to Preble Street for the duration of your membership as a contributor for now and till the end of time. As is always the case, the 50% of your donation will go to the charity that was highlighted in the month that you join. So, now, on with the show.
The Broken Brain.
Recording in progress.
Hello, everybody out there. Welcome back to The Broken Brain. It's Dwight, and I'm here with you again so that we can investigate a little bit about the intersection of psychology, culture, and as always, taking a look into how we live and some really, really interesting points about that today that have to do with the way that we are conducting ourselves and living in the modern world and just basically ways to be a little healthier in a really, really specific, interesting way that I'm really excited to talk about with my guest today, who is Julie Brams. She is an earth-centered psychotherapist, a writer, a forest therapy guide, and I think as we're going to find out a lot more, she is the co-founder of the organization Elemental, which is a learning community focused on the interconnectedness between nature, the human psyche, and as always on here, the psychology and the needs that we have there. She's also the author of the recent book, The Nature Embedded Mind, which tells us a lot more about these things and how we can do them as well. Julie, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to share with you in particular and your audience. Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's really fascinating to come across some of the ways that people are helping for interconnectedness. And I wanted to kind of start out by asking how you got into this approach. You are an LMFT, if people don't know, licensed marriage and family therapist as well. So as a psychotherapist coming to this particular approach. So yeah, how did that all happen? How'd you get into it?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Briefly, I mean, there are long answers, but I think briefly, I'll say, I have been a clinician practicing in private practice for 34 years. So that's sort of my home lens is the, psychotherapy and listening to people and learning about, I say this, learning what causes suffering and most importantly, what relieves it. You probably know, as well as many of your listeners, that our field grabbed onto mindfulness in Vipassana meditation through John Kabat-Zinn, Saki Santorelli, and that has become a very common, I guess, or I'll say common way of integrating that part of intentionality and attentional skill. And then through my understanding or learning, being involved in that, and my love of our earth, which again, I feel like most of us have, many of us have, whether we're clinicians or we're lay people, most people love our earth, love the rest of nature. As this, like, there's a man named Clemens Arve. He wrote a book called The Biophilia Effect, that biophilia, or the love of the rest of nature, is like hardwired in us. I think we all resonate to that. But as I went along my pursuit of what can I bring to Earth through this framework of psychology, I began to really understand, like, this mistake in our framework, in the foundation of our thinking. And as it became apparent to me that this is an actual mental health issue, I want to kind of use my words properly. I think it's a mental health issue that I believe our field needs to acknowledge and kind of take seriously and correct for. That's where I really got a lot of fire in me and the stamina and passion to write this book and to begin to explain what I mean by something that seems so common knowledge, and yet is continually kind of overlooked in a particular way. So I don't know if that answers, but...
Absolutely. I think it's a pretty powerful thing, both in the therapy field as well as everywhere in life, to ask ourselves that kind of like, what do I bring to the table? What's my offer, or whatever it is that I can do? And you've found this, obviously, this interconnectedness. One of the things that struck me about the way that you talk about it in the book and some of your work is it kind of stuck in my head, this element of proactive and reactive ways of dealing with things, which in mental health, I think, we oftentimes see people seek out mental health help, and when we say mental health, we mean something reactive. I'm having a problem. And then there's the proactive managing and maintaining our health, including our mental health. And it struck me that in the way that you talk about relating to the earth, relating to nature, and how that can be helpful, it really hit me that there's some powerful elements of both in there. Of like, is something a reactive, like, oh, I'm having some problems, this will help? Or is it kind of like, well, do I consider connection with nature and things? Is that is that part of a day-to-day existence? Is it just a normal part of life, which would be more proactive too? It struck me that there's kind of both, you're covering both bases there as far as the needs with mental health.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And I want to keep kind of going under that. Means good for us, good for our bodies, good for our minds. We know that science is showing it. Like, we have all of the green lights to go ahead and embrace that reality that human beings are optimized better in nature than, separated from physically or digitally. So there is that. And that's I think, kind of coming onto mainstream pretty well. I think the part that I'm getting at, and which is why I think your podcast is important to me, because you are also a clinician, and I believe that, a lot of your listeners are clinicians, and although this isn't it's not just for clinicians, I think clinicians play an important role in what I'm talking about in terms of implicit bias, or, like, let's say, systemic problem. So the foundation of our mind and our profession is currently under the umbrella of anthropocentrism, which is a pretend idea that came online around 500 BCE that strategically decided that human beings are separate from the rest of nature, superior to the rest of nature, and therefore can and should dominate the rest of nature. And so that leads to all kinds of problems as we're facing, climate crisis and all of the distresses that our culture, Western civilization has created. But my point is that's not reality. So our mind has been polluted and severed from reality in a very important way that makes us, in our civilization, perpetually working at a deficit because our bodies obviously are not separate from the rest of nature. We are deeply, deeply embedded in it. We co-create it. Simplest example is that we participate in creating the atmosphere every time we exhale. We inhale, we exhale, we're co-creating the atmosphere. That's just one we all know. Then we can go further into how else we are co-creating. And if our mind is taught and conditioned, which Western civilization trains us away from, understanding that our mind also is embedded in the earth, right? So we're retrieving some things that were taken away from us that I am saying are traumatic, that the mind is separate from the body. Descartes.
Yeah.
The body is separate from the earth in a certain weird way. Like we know it isn't, but we're taught to have to, not even include ourselves when we do, what is it called when you're looking at ecosystems? We don't even include human beings in the ecosystem. We're looking at the ecosystem as an observer, like this whole scientific, and I'm a scientist of sorts. So do you see what I'm leading to?
Absolutely. That separation, that assumption. I like how you put that. First of all, there's a superiority assumption. A ridiculous image popped into my head from years ago, an old episode of The Simpsons, where they show the teacher at their school is showing a video to reply to Lisa wants to be a vegetarian, and they're trying to shame her for it. Anyway, and in this little video, it shows you need to understand the natural system of the circle of life and of food, the way it goes. And they show a little diagram that basically is every animal with arrows pointing to a human. So basically, anyway, it just reminded me of that, of like, here's the human and here's nature, and they're not the same, and we're in charge. And it's, and I think that sometimes we, number one, aren't aware of that thinking. And number two, we don't necessarily think of it as anything that has a negative effect on us in a day-to-day way, to think of ourselves as not part of nature, or even to think of ourselves as not part of the animal kingdom, and just saying like we have a natural connection to everything. And when we sever that, it does change how we behave, I think, and the way that we make decisions.
Yeah, to your points that we are unaware of it. And, it's because we're being trained away 24/7. Like this is why I'm saying, at least for a good while, there needs to be a kind of an intervention to help a mind, what I'm calling reroute, or, remember how it operates in relationality with the rest of nature or other species. So we are very unaware of it. And yeah, I think because it's been, and anybody please fact check me because I'm not a historian, but I believe it's something like 150 generations we've been living with this. So it's long enough for us to have forgotten and think this is how people are. And all of these, what I am saying is, a lot of very unhealthy and bizarre behaviors that follow having been torn out of reality. So yeah, the ways that we behave are certainly influenced We know this by the story that we tell. And by the way, I'm not the only person saying this. There's a whole field, eco-psychology, ecotherapy. Many other fields are picking up on this. So I don't mean to claim this is totally original, but what I'm bringing to us is the possibility of making a significant change in our field that addresses it in a way. And I kind of think of it as maybe another wave of understanding how dire it is that we need to really take this to heart and reroot ourselves. And, I know I'm kind of leaping all over the place, but when I found a method that was scientific enough for me, again, being a serious clinician, and it was developed by a man named Amos Clifford, extremely user-friendly. It accomplishes deep change in about 3 hours, even less sometimes, but 3 hours is the sweet spot. Mm-hmm. And with this methodology that came through his integration of Zen Buddhism, psychotherapy, wilderness tracking, the Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku, which translates to forest bathing. I mean, it's a very council circle, like it's a very comprehensive and rigorous methodology that, again, helps anyone begin to understand what is it to reroute, to come back out of the delusion in ways that all of our ancestors did at one point, and in ways that our indigenous contemporaries still do. So this isn't like mystical, weird, this is like very, yeah.
Well, that's one of the things I really liked about your approach is that it has that grounded, also it's applicable, as you put it, it's something we can access. I think one of the reasons that we don't, just in general, that we don't connect often is that we view natural interaction or the beauties of nature. I'll say many, maybe most, but many of us, we view that as almost a special event, even a vacation of like, oh, I'll go do that when I'm on a trip or maybe at a special time, or I'll go camping once a year or something. And people will go, that was so beautiful. And I wish I could do that more, or just don't think about it much, instead of something that is regular. And the use of that tied in with, like you say, this grounded approach of this serious, like scientific and medical and psychological approach. I wonder if you could tell people a little bit about that. Some of the things they do to reroute, or that methodology you're talking about. What kinds of things do people do when they're going through that?
Yeah. Okay. Let me again, like the book is an introduction to this, and like any true change, it's an experiential one. So I will talk about it, and I want to just emphasize that, like meditation, you think about it, but you're not getting any of the benefits until you practice. So similarly with this, we can talk about it. It's going to be very easy to understand. And until you start to do it, you're not going to know the answers that you're seeking. It's very much, it comes from the doing that you will gain your understanding and your certainty about this. It's also really important that none of us centers my knowledge or my experience of it. I am not, like in this method, the human being is not the teacher or the therapist or we are, in this method, it is the rest of nature that is the teacher, the therapist, the one that you need to go ask these questions to, quite literally, not as a poetic metaphor, anything. It very realistically remembering that we can gain information from the other than human beings that know a lot about what it means to be human, and that we get our information from them So again, I'm here to just be that doorway, hopefully. And I do have like 8 years under my belt. So I have experience, but again, I don't want to act like mine is yours. So one of the first things to begin to come out of the trance is to recognize that we are always in nature because you are always in your body. Your body is nature.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Your body was born of the earth like all the other organisms. So to begin to really allow yourself to understand yourself, not just part of the animal kingdom or da di da di da, which, that's how we're taught to do it. Again, we're also taught to put ourselves above the rest of the animal kingdom because we have a thinking brain supposedly that they don't have, which of course, again, science is showing is wrong. It's amazing to me. Even science is bringing us back to the truth.
Yeah, and when you look at the way that some like animals, when we really observe them and when we're able to study the way they think, that there's a lot of animals who very, very similar in the way that they seem to function mentally and the things they do. But I love this concept. So we're walking around kind of containing and experiencing nature because we are part of it already. You see, once again, it's interesting to me that even as we're talking about this interconnectedness and we're not separate, my brain, when I was making that point a minute ago, went right to, yeah, we don't spend really time in nature, as if once again, it's a destination, not something we're part of. And then as you point, so that's really cool that you pointed that out.
Right. And so that's what I'm calling like this perceptual cage that we're in. And this is our language keeps us caged off. We can be out of doors and still not be in what I'm talking about, a natural relationship that comes from the bond that you begin to develop with an other than human. Just to go back to the method. So the method is very structured, but extremely spontaneous and playful. So it's got we call them a sequence of invitations. The invitations always begin with 2, and then the rest depends on, it's actually called It Depends. That's what we name it. So the first invitation is pleasures of presence, where we really come into our sensory experience. We kind of keep it to the basic 5, but in a way that allows us to also, again, see, or what I'm trying to say, like grasp that we're part of it. So, for example, it might be, what do you notice? What does this place sound like? Is there a melody? Is there a rhythm? What sound is farthest? What sound is closest? Of course, in a very spacious way, not just like I'm doing it right now, but, tuning into that and then noticing your own sound. What sound is coming from you? Do you notice perhaps the sound of your breath, the sound of digesting, sound of swallowing, or would you like to contribute more into the soundscape? Would you like to vocalize? Would you like to add, a rhythm? But it's all within, again, as you practice it, like I find myself, a bird will sing and I'll sing back. Like that's not even, I don't even notice anymore, but it's just sort of like what I do. And so again, I don't want to predict anything for anyone, but I'm just trying to let us all remember that we are participating. We can participate more. And if we participate intentionally from a framework of kinship, relationality, now we're back in our right mind. This is where we belong.
That's interesting. As you're saying that, like with the bird, that feeling of basically just being connected with around you. It reminded me of, I used to work at it was a community mental health center for, it was the county mental health provider. And there's the big front door, and then my office was kind of near this little side door, so I'd always walk in the same way. Well, one day, and when I walked in, for a while, I would hear this like aggressive chirping. It was like a bird sound, and I kept thinking it sounded like it was about to be swarmed or attacked or something. It was like, and I'd be like, where is that coming from? And it was every day. And then one day I noticed that there was this bed on either side of the sidewalk where they had little bushes and trees and plants. And this bird, it just happened to be the same color as the bark that they put down. And it was this ground nesting bird. I don't know the name of the type of bird, but so it had a little nest that it had built 2 or 3 feet away from the sidewalk. And so it was there with its eggs and stuff. And every time anyone walked by, it was like, it was saying it was under attack or something. And so because of that, I started kind of walking a little further around, and I kind of, I didn't sing or anything back, but I would just kind of comment of like, "It's okay, buddy," or something like that. "Don't worry about it." And it was this little exchange that I was having. It reminded me of that, where it became part of just my, morning commute in, was trying to, obviously it couldn't understand me, but verbally reassure this, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. It's okay, or whatever. So there was this connection with this little creature until I assumed the eggs hatched and it went away. But so just seeing that as like a little bit of a connection, communication. That's very interesting to then think of that as something that isn't that a weird thing that happened? You're describing it more of kind of changing the perspective to say, isn't that a normal thing that happened?
Exactly.
Sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that it came to your mind, to me again, is like I'm just going to say, and you can push back, but is like your natural self wanting you to clock it. And it's like, yes. Do you see, like it's saying, remember? And yes, we're having a conversation that validates, values, and confirms, yeah, that's not weird. That's how it goes. Mm-hmm. And I also want to just kind of gently challenge you that the bird didn't understand you.
Okay, yeah. Tell me more about that. I was thinking about the English language that we didn't share, but tell me more what you mean about the understanding, because interested in that.
Yeah, so let's think of this again, from what we know as clinicians or just human beings, but we know as clinicians that the words are the least of the communication. The tone, the attitude, facial expression, nonverbal, right? That's how we even understand each other, right? This is what makes a great actor. That they have a script with a sentence that looks like garbage, and then you put a person that brings it to life, and you're like, oh my God, all the meaning comes through something that's not the words. So just playfully.
That's interesting. Yeah. No, that's true, because you think of the nonverbal language, and as you said that, I'm thinking about all the times where I might have seen a movie that I'm like, this movie's kind of lame, and if it was not for this person who is in it, it would be unwatchable, because maybe someone is communicating something.
Right. And so what you communicated, you did use English words, but what you communicated was coming through a lot of parts of you, probably, and this is another kind of, what have we forgotten ways that we communicate, but it's probably coming through just your tone, or just like what was in your heart, of it's okay, this reassurance, this compassion, this empathy that you naturally gave to another being that you understood from their nonverbal was having something going on. Mm-hmm. Either they were feeling whatever, we don't have to know exactly what the bird was feeling, but you recognize something, and your impulse, your natural impulse over time was, I'm going to say something back.
Yeah.
Like that's how we operate.
And it was interesting. While I also thought, I honestly, I did think it was kind of funny that it's like that was the. I mean, it probably didn't obviously know, probably didn't know this. I think was that was maybe the worst place, one of the worst places to put the nest, originally, and we all. Of course, we all have, misjudgments like that. I know I do. At the same time, so I did think it was kind of a bit humorous that it's like, wow, that is a triggering place to live for that creature. But yet, I did find that, yeah, even though I wasn't thinking about the connectivity and the communication, I did have that urge to say, it's okay, buddy, it's all right. I'm not going to do anything. Don't worry. Nobody here is interested in harming you. It's all right.
Right.
Yeah. So there. And that always hits me when there's something that is interesting and insightful and something that it speaks to us. I find it oftentimes connects with something we already maybe were thinking, but we weren't thinking about thinking it, if that makes sense. Because as soon as you're talking about that communication connectivity, I'm like, oh, that actually makes sense. There's some part of me that maybe believed or just hadn't focused on it,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, again, I think this is our instinct. It is our natural way. And we have to condition ourselves out of it or be trained out of it. And as you brought up with The Simpsons, we use oftentimes shame. I think you said Lisa was being shamed out of trying.
Right. The tone was like, you're a vegetarian. What, are you crazy?
Yeah.
They were like, I think even in the video it said, is my friend who wants to be a vegetarian, is she crazy or just stupid? Which those are the only two options.
Right. So this is how Western civilization keeps us in what I'm referring to as this cage, mental cage, that we risk being ridiculed, made fun of, humiliated, shamed. Back in the original day, centuries ago, or more than that, we were killed. We were, there were anti-pagan laws. And I know a lot of these words are loaded with different meanings, but if we just think of pagan as people connected to earth, people that had right relationship.
That was a big part of spirituality and even religion. In fact, even amongst some of the traditions that have survived through being adapted or assimilated or, whatever you want to call it, through Judeo-Christian practices. Christmas trees and winter festival and, different things that originally were more directly tied to a natural kind of source too. As you're saying that, I'm just thinking about how that's survived in a way that maybe hasn't survived in some ways too. At the same time, we see little elements of that were adapted or shifted over time, whether it was because we had an inner pull towards it still, or maybe as a marketing technique, maybe both. But that is interesting to see how the connection of nature was very spiritual at one point as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do want to be careful not to take it in for our conversation, not to take it into a spiritual, this is again dependent on the person that's connecting. This isn't a religion. It's not a spiritual practice. If you have a spiritual practice, you will discover how they go together or not, but this isn't that. What I would say though, and I feel I'm firm on this, even though it's, it will be debatable and there will be pushback. But what I think we're talking about is sentience of other beings, so.
Sort of like, would that have that connectivity you're talking about to the other things around me are also alive and have a life, or there's other stuff going on?
Alive, intelligent, aware, they are aware of us. They have their own intelligence. And again, this is not about trying to make other species into humans and not about trying to make humans into other species, but it's about remembering the actuality that all life has an intelligence, that our one Earth, our one planet that we are co-creating has an intelligence to it. It knows how to balance, how to regenerate, how to, all of these things. And human beings, when we are reconnected to that vast living organism, have those qualities as well. When we're torn out of it and then told, no, you can't talk to the ocean. Nope, you don't know what the grass is saying. Nope, that's weird. You're hugging a tree. Wow, that's so weird. Like, these are
Yeah.
all ways of keeping us from being more resilient and, again, regenerating, rather than I thought about this once. We do have a tendency to identify with structures. So if you see ruins or a building or a city that has been taken over by plants, we tend to be taught to identify with the building that has collapsed, rather than seeing that we are, in fact, the vines, the grass, the fungi, the microbials that are reclaiming harmonious balance. So again, this is sort of where I like to imagine humanity can go in its best case scenario, where we function along with the rest of Earth in this kind of harmonious, regenerative, balanced, respectful, respectful of different. Our language is so messed up, but respectful of different components or elements of how do we heal.
It really strikes me as a taking apart. It's a little more specific part and a little deeper of the whole thing of mindfulness, because a mindful approach would say, oh, I'm going for a little hike and I'm listening and I'm watching and I'm feeling and everything. To me, there's this connectivity part you're describing is like, I'm actually, that's a little deeper for me when it comes to mindfulness, because now I'm viewing myself as a participant, not just this air moving in on my lungs, my feet on the trail, I hear the bird. It's like, oh, actually, I'm a part of this. I'm here, this tree, this bird, this ground, or whatever. It's all, I'm participating with it. The participating part is a whole new depth and angle to a mindful approach to something. And
Yes.
and look what I
Yeah.
did. I just fell right back into the thing that you mentioned, which is I assumed it was a nature hike. It doesn't have to. What you're saying is it doesn't have to be a nature hike. It can have that same appreciation with the bird outside my window or the trees that are in the parking lot of my office building or whatever, too.
Exactly. And I did write a chapter, and I'm teaching a CE course for clinicians to really understand the interplay between mindfulness and this type of nature therapy. So, briefly, mindfulness, we know, is an attentional skill, right? So, we're learning how to deploy our attention in a particular way. And in, the hardest part for a Western mind is understanding that there is something more than just thinking, so being able to repetitively notice, oh, my attention is in thinking, or my attention is in sensing my experience versus thinking about my experience, right? So that's the gold, let's say, of mindfulness in terms of our work. Then nature therapy uses sensation, but it is a relational skill. So it's not attentional, it's relational. So how do I relate with the other than human beings? And coming with maybe this goes back to mindfulness, coming back with a beginner's mind, compassion, and an openness to kindness, right? Loving kindness. So we might say, I'm going to wander out of doors. And you're right, it could be the parking lot, could be a forest, could be something amazing, something you pass every day. And just say, I'm here with these other beings. What might I give them? This is another way for us to break the trance, to start to approach our encounter first listening, not talking, because we're very dominating. So listening, and then wondering, what might this being want from me? And again, getting out of our own narcissism, I'm going to ask, what do you need? And suspending our disbelief enough to begin to notice if there's something that we come to understand is needed. Sometimes the answer will be nothing. I don't need anything. I'm good. And then maybe what we're giving back is just appreciation or love or like, hey, glad you're having a good day. Or, again, it's taking what we know human to human and then expanding that to interspecies, you know?
Yeah, it strikes me as related with a lot of modern healing and therapy techniques, the somatic techniques and the different things where, first of all, one of the attempts is to get out of our head, to be able to interact with our emotions in a way that we're impacting emotions instead of just thinking about what we wish they would do.
Right.
It kind of reminds me of that. And anyone who listens to this show knows that it seems like I bring up IFS every time because I really like it. But
Yeah.
when we're doing this visualization of emotional parts within ourselves, it just reminded me of that when you're talking about, yeah, what does this need for the environment, the living beings around me, what do you need from me? And it's like this visualization that I don't have to visualize because it's actually really there in front of me to say
Exactly.
I'm participating in an interaction that isn't just based off of figuring out stuff or whatever.
Right.
It's a very interesting approach. It's going to really change the way I'm going on walks now. So this is very cool.
Yeah. And, again, just to give more encouragement and familiarity, we do this all the time with our pets, you know? Like I think most people that have a pet or some plant or something that they're caring for that's not a human being, we know full well that they need us, they love us, we need them, we love them. They know what we're feeling, we know what they're feeling. They let us know what they need. We do our best to provide it, you know. So this isn't an unfamiliar skill. It's just again repairing our trauma of having been brutally told we can't do it with certain other species. Like that is just not true. And again, it's not me just fantasizing. Part of it is my fantasy because I did grow up as a white woman in the United States of America. But if you listen to any Aboriginal, I mean, they won't even begin to be able to explain. Wow, that I just shook my laptop.
The cat. Well, see, we're living with another living being right there.
Yeah.
As your cat just bumped into your camera. I love it.
Yeah, they would never even be able to unpack their language enough to show all of the interconnectedness with other beings, even elementals, like fire, water, air,
You
earth.
get some indigenous languages that have really multiple words to describe different states of water or snow or things, different types too, more than we would do.
For sure, but even like if you want to, the book is called Sand Talk, and I am so bad with names. I feel really horrible that I can't pop the name off for you.
I'll find it while you describe what it is.
He is an Aboriginal man who is also like a doctoral professor. Anyway, he's just sort of talking about the difference between their colonized culture and his Aboriginal culture and the symbolism. When he talks about sand talk, there are ways that there are, like images, like let's say the spiral. That's an easy one. We all kind of even gravitate toward that one. But what it actually means is so deep and comprehensive and interrelational. We, in English or whatever our preferred language, doesn't come close to letting us feel moment to moment what Thich Nhat Hanh calls interbeing. In
Yeah.
Thich Nhat Hanh, we'll talk about we inter are.
Oh, I like
Yeah.
that. That's I like cool words. Um,
Yeah.
yes, I like that. I did find, I was looking it up.
Oh, good.
Tyson, I don't know if I'll say it right.
Yeah.
Tyson Yunkaporta? That
Yeah.
might be pronounced differently. If he's listening, then please, call in now and let us know how to say your name better, or email me. Yeah, Sand Talk, How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World. Just there we
Yeah.
go to
He's
round that out.
incredible. And I highly recommend, again, if anybody is like feeling this spark, because this conversation should spark something that's like a memory or something, and a like a yeah, I want that. Read his book, you know, start diving into these ways of being, because again, they are healthier. And that's, I think, the future for us. And again, my appeal to my colleagues, to all of us, please, let's do this in our own minds first, and then learn to help other people out of this cage. Because again, it's like, as clinicians, we're in a very unique position, because we're already being gifted this idea that we are experts or something, in health. And so let's do this. And then also, as non-clinicians, your mental health is your own business. Mental sovereignty. You do not have to wait for somebody to give you permission to reroute your mind back into reality. So again, forest guiding, forest therapy, no one has to be a clinician to do that, and most guides are not. I just happen to be walking in both worlds, and desperately wanting to make this bridge for all of us and for our profession.
Well, it's not only is it fascinating stuff theoretically, it's also very applicable, and that's one of the things I really like about it is you have this approach that people can do. I want to remind everyone the book is The Nature Embedded Mind, and I didn't mention earlier you let me know that you just it had won recently the Nautilus Gold Award. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Just to let people know, and speaking of letting people know, I want to let them know where they can follow you, your organization, better, if there's better places or more ideal places to find your book. Before we list those, though, I wanted to ask if you know of any ways that you would recommend to give back to the community, whether it's an organizational approach, charity, nonprofit, or just something good and supportive to do for people and the world around us and things. Is there anything you could recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, I would recommend, there's many things. Obviously, if you want, focus on the other than human beings. But what I would say is find your local First Nations people and help them. Many are getting land back. You can help them financially, but you can also help them physically. Like, I know here where I am in LA, they often have volunteer days. So I will give money, but I will also give my labor to help them rematriate the land. So I would love it if we all did that.
That's great. That's a really cool recommendation. I even as happens sometimes, I don't think we've ever had that one before. So I'm really grateful for you sharing that. Well, tell people a little bit how do they track you down and follow you around? That sounded
Yeah.
creepy, and I often say it that way. Actually, online, and your work is mostly what I meant.
Yeah. If you want to stalk me, please go to.
What hiking trip? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the website is experienceelemental.com, where you'll find out more about my mission, my vision for all of us, and offerings that we do, which are some in person, some hybrid, some online. I have a rerouting course. It's book study. If you're interested in reading the book, you can buy the book wherever you like to buy books. You can also buy it on my website, and I'll sign it and send it to you. But we do a deep dive into the concepts, but mostly have a cohort that is also non other than humans in the cohort. So the cohort would be you and your other than human study buddy. So we're already breaking this, human centric, like we're the only ones with the answer, and, like letting the other than humans inform our questions as well. You can follow me on Instagram. It's my name, Julie Brams, LMFT. Email me. Like, I feel very, very in a position right now to be available. I don't know how long that will last, but please reach out to me.
Act now while she's still available, everyone. No, and that's great. And that level of accessibility is one thing that struck me just about. I could really kind of feel it even just in your writing style. And so appreciate that. Well, everybody out there who's listening, thank you for being here, and make sure to, when you're finding little things like this that we're talking about, if you're feeling that, obviously you should read the book. It's really good, but also looking into how to kind of practice these things. Love to hear from anybody of how you are applying that. The little intro that was up front showed where I shared which charity we're highlighting for this month, so everyone be aware of that. And also, if you choose to support the program by going to patreon.com/brokenbrain, if you join as just a freebie follower, you will get to see the videos of the interviews and things that we do, as well as if you become a contributor, a financial contributor, 50% of your donation will always go to the highlighted charity that was the charity in the month in which you joined. And that will happen from now until the sun explodes, or as long as, you're a member, whichever comes first. So, Julie, really, really grateful for what you're doing out there, and thank you for coming here to share it with us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm happy to connect.